delivering tangible and measurable results for both countries. He stressed the importance of moving beyond commitments to implementation, ensuring that agreements translate into real benefits for citizens.
In an increasingly complex international environment marked by geopolitical uncertainty, economic transformation, and global challenges, the need for stronger cooperation among African countries has never been more evident. It is therefore fitting that Ghana and Zimbabwe are taking decisive steps to strengthen our partnership through the Permanent Joint Commission for Cooperation, which will serve as a strategic platform for structured dialogue and coordinated action. The framework of the PJCC also provides an opportunity for our two countries to deepen collaboration across a number of strategic sectors where our strengths are complementary and our interests aligned. As we all know, economic transformation remains at the heart of the development agenda of both Ghana and Zimbabwe. Ghana hosts the Secretariat of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, positioning the country as the gateway to the African market, while Zimbabwe also as an important entry point to the Southern African Development Community (SADC) region. By leveraging these strategic positions, our two countries can work together to expand intra-African trade, strengthen regional value chains, and promote industrial development across the continent.
Zimbabwe's Foreign Affairs Minister, Amon Morira, highlighted the urgency of stronger cooperation among African countries in the face of current geopolitical uncertainties. He said the Commission serves as a strategic platform to deepen collaboration and align shared responsibilities.
Relations between Zimbabwe and Ghana are historic and principled, rooted in our shared struggle for liberation and enduring ideals of pan-African solidarity, solidarity meant to eliminate poverty, to eliminate humiliation of the African peoples, and to eliminate dehumanization. Despite our strong political relations, trade between our two countries remains below its full potential. Zimbabwe stands ready to expand mutually beneficial trade with Ghana through agricultural products. This joint Permanent Commission on Cooperation provides an institutional framework for structured and forward-looking engagement between our two countries. In this regard, we commend the work undertaken by our senior officials since 2022 in laying the foundation of this inaugural session.
Both ministers emphasized economic transformation as central to their development agendas, identifying mining and the management of natural resources as critical sectors that can drive growth, industrialization, and job creation. The meeting is expected to reinvigorate Ghana-Zimbabwe relations with a renewed focus on accountability, implementation, and results-driven cooperation.
The adoption of this defining resolution, which restores the humanity and dignity of our ancestors, must certainly mark a proud moment for all Ghanaians and people of African descent. Ghana has once again demonstrated that we are the cradle of Pan-Africanism and truly the land of freedom and justice. Our ancestors will be grateful to this generation that we ensure that they have been remembered by the world, and particularly at the foremost multilateral organization. For more than 300 years, over 12.5 million Africans were forcibly captured, commodified, and transported out of Africa, constituting the largest forced migration in history and one of the longest-running systems of organized mass human exploitation in recorded history, with about 3 million more dying in capture, detention, and trafficking across oceans. Yet the international community has remained largely silent, and while reparations and formal apologies have been provided in respect of other atrocities committed against groups, no comprehensive reparatory framework has been put in place for the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans. Resolution A/RES/80/250 therefore shaped the international response to slavery slavery and the transatlantic slave trade from commemorative remembrance to acknowledgement of the structural impact that continue to define global relations. It sets the stage for advancing reparatory claims for Africans and people of African descent and reflects the collective will of United Nations member states. It serves as an authoritative framework to guide international dialogue, shape policy priorities, and inform the development of follow-up mechanisms.
Taxes and things like that. So we initiated discussion with the ministers concerned to ensure that they are able to transport their goods by road, which makes them competitive because it's faster, cheaper, and easier. The ministry participated in the World Expo in Osaka, Japan, to enhance Ghana's market access and investment opportunities. I'm happy to say that after our participation in Osaka, the Japanese State Minister for Foreign Affairs led a 50-member investment delegation to Ghana. Direct effect of what we did in Osaka, and I think this is commendable. The investor interest shown is in automotive components, cocoa, share and cashew sectors, and these are the areas we actually need investment. And so I think that our visit to Japan, Osaka, has been very positive. Ghana also received an award for the best theme, a country of possibility and empowerment, exactly what we are and exactly what we do here. Now to GEPA. The Ghana Export Promotion Authority supported our growers by supplying 211,606 coconut seedlings, adding close to 3,306 acres of coconut production, 2 million pineapple suckers, adding 1,512 tons and 84 acres of available pineapple land for production to pineapple production, and 5.4 tons of planting gel to strengthen coconut cultivation. This enhanced productivity and drive export growth. GEPA supported 91 SMEs and 7 horticultural associations at major international fairs, including Fruit Logistica, just to mention a few. The most important point here is the fact that they were able to secure 350 million orders in exports. That is highly commendable. Additionally, 150 SMEs in handicraft and manufacturing participated in global buyer-seller platforms such as the Ambenti, Salon di Chocolati, just to mention a few, and then here too we generated about $250 million in exports. In 2025, for the first time in Ghana's export history, mangoes were transported by trucks to Morocco. We had about 26 metric tons mango being transported by road. The trucks actually came all the way from Morocco to pick the mangoes back. It means that we are doing well in this area as well. Then in line with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Protocol on Trade in Services, GEPA for the first time again advanced Ghana's digital export potential in the international market by showcasing ICT-enabled services at GITEX Global in Dubai.
Participants gathered for the Gachifa Dialogue, a forum aimed at examining the implications of Chinese new zero-tariff trade policy for African economies. The dialogue, organized by the Ghana-China Friendship Association, provided a platform for stakeholders to explore how Ghanaian businesses and exporters can take advantage of expanding market access to China. Serving as a chairperson for the event, a representative from the Chinese Embassy in Ghana in his opening address emphasized that the China-Africa Zero-Tariff Agreement is designed to deepen economic cooperation between China and the African continent. He noted that the initiative will not only facilitate trade, but also enhance industrial cooperation and economic growth across Africa.
And in the year 2024 Beijing Summit of the Forum on China-African Cooperation, Chinese President Xi Jinping solemnly announced the 10th Partnership Initiative for Jointly Advancing Modernization, marking the beginning of a new journey for China and Africa to pursue the dream of the modernization together. China's decision to implement a comprehensive zero-tariff policy for all African countries, with which it has established diplomatic relations with China. This initiative will be effective in May 1st. Year 2026 reflects China's sense of responsibility as a sincere friend and a reliable partner. And this is a very important initiative in the history of African industrialization. This is a practical measures to promote updating the China-African cooperation and achieve shared development.
Delivering a presentation at the forum, the General Secretary of the Ghana-China Friendship Association, Dr. Benjamin Anyagri, highlighted the opportunities the policy presents for Ghanaian exporters, stating that the policy provides Ghana with an opportunity to diversify its export destinations and reduce reliance on a limited number of global markets.
Today, that enduring partnership brings us to a new frontier, the China-Africa Zero Tariff, which opens the door for a wide range of African products to enter the Chinese market. This is an opportunity to diversify our trade partners and reduce our dependence on a few global markets. But opportunity alone is not enough. We must learn from the world around us. That is why initiatives like the One District, One Factory, integrated with a vision of a 24-hour economy, and of course, the non-functioning establishment, import substitution establishment built by Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, if could be revived, should be revived. This dialogue championed by Gachifa is a call to action for Ghana's best interests. We must draw the benefits of this policy into our own sphere. Can Ghana, by strategically positioning 3 key industries, become a major exporter to China in the next 10 to 15 years? Yes, we can.
The dialogue also featured a panel discussion involving representatives from several government organizations and institutions who shared perspective on how the policy could impact their sectors. Speakers highlighted the need for Ghanaian businesses to improve production capacity, value addition and quality standards in order to fully benefit from the expanded access to the Chinese market. Reporting for Pan-African Television, I am Danny Otuisante.
I am happy to note and announce that the Ministry of Education has received clearance and approval from the Ministry of Finance for the recruitment of teachers across the country. We will be recruiting at least 7,000 teachers. 7,000 teachers across the country. We want the process to be open, transparent, and open.
He has labored, he has suffered.
Good morning and thank you very much for joining us on Pan-African Television. We are live from our studios in Abelempe. We are also live on Radio Gold 90.5 FM. You can get us on social media, 2 platforms, Facebook, Pan-African Television. Look for the page, YouTube, Pan-African Television. You get to watch us live. On both platforms, use the comment section. What you think about the discussion we'll be having, just share it with us. I'll read as many as I can whilst the show is on. Well, once again, good morning to you. And this morning, we're going back to the discussion, which is the whole world is starting to feel the effects of something that was started by the US and Israel. Now we have issues, Ghana, we have issues with the cost of fuel. And it is not limited to Ghana. It's across the world, everywhere you go. Even in the US where they started, it's in the UK. Whichever country you go to, the price of fuel continues to rise. And of course, fuel has its own way of influencing inflation generally. There are many other things that it is affecting because the Strait of Hormuz is the passage for many goods, including the fact that this week, sachet water producers decided to increase the price of sachet water, a bag, by up to 50%. Because according to them, polymer is one of the goods that use the Strait of Hormuz, and now they are unable to move it as fast as it used to, forcing the price up, forcing them to also increase the price of sachet water. So those are two things that I just mentioned. There are many other things that have been affected. The war itself has been quite an interesting lesson from both sides about the kind of leadership the US has currently, Israel's own role, and also about Iran. We are all learning a lot about Iran. I am learning a lesson in succession planning. Well, we'll be talking about that, current state of the war, and then we'll move on to the discussion on the matter of sole sourcing or single sourcing. If you're going by the law, what is being alleged relates to single sourcing by the fourth estate on the road contracts and the big push. The president this week met civil society, and he says fourth estate should put allegations, detailed allegations, bring it to his office. He will then take a response from the Minister for Roads and Highways on what those allegations are. And then they will come out ultimately. So we'll be discussing the president's own intervention and conclude who listens World Cup coach, because we fired our coach this week. Otuado is no longer coach of the Black Stars. There are many names being thrown and bandied about, but so far nothing concrete yet. Is it the best thing to do at this time? That's how we'll conclude our show today. And of course, as always, always a pleasure seeing him in the morning, Saturday mornings. Coming Chris Prajina is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. We're also joined in the studio this morning by Mujib Rahman, who is a member of the MPP's communication team, also Director Legal of the United Party, that's lawyer Andrew Apia Dankwa, and then Hamza Suini is a member of the NDC's communication team. That's our panel for today to discuss the issues that we are tabling today. Like I said, you're an important part of the show, so do share your thoughts with us. Well, let's start from the war against Iran. And I'll start from my left, from Mujib Rahman on this. Good morning to you.
Yeah, bro. Good morning.
Hope all is well.
You are fine.
Yeah. Same here.
We are managing. Yes, no, thank you. Thank you. We'll discuss this war, and it's still ongoing, and we are all seeing what is happening across the globe. It is unfortunate that some of us were thinking by now it would have come to an end. We only pray for it to end because of the ramifications. We are here, we are not part of the war, but we are feeling the effects of the war, just like you have mentioned in the area of oil. I think before the war started, petrol was just around, is it 10 point something per liter in Ghana here. Now, yesterday when I checked, I think it's about, is it 14 or something like that? Yeah, almost getting to 15. So even if you don't look at it, when you buy, the gauge will tell you that something is going on. And you have also mentioned another group of people, that is sachet water people, saying they are going to increase their price because of their raw materials. It is true that the Strait of Hormuz is playing an important part in global economy, global activities in area of market, because according to statistics, they said 20 or so percent of world oil passes through that stretch. And now, for almost a month or more now, ships cannot move and pass as they used to. Definitely it's going to affect the countries. I know Pakistan have also increased, they have increased fuel price drastically, and their citizens are up in arms complaining. But that is it. But you ask yourselves, now my problem is, I think I asked that question here. What is the end game of Donald Trump? Is it still a regime change that he wants in Iran, or what again? Because we want to know. Experts are saying that there's no plan, and you must, if you are going for something, you must know what, this is the reason why I'm doing this, and I want to achieve that. So after you achieve that, you stop. Or in the process, okay, I have achieved half of it, then let me just withdraw. So now, some of us are confused. We just don't really know what Americans want at the moment. But the distraction of the war is becoming too many. Yeah, it is true that America is far away from Iran. They can't get direct hit, just like the way Israel missiles are going into Iran. Iran missiles are going into Israel, destroying properties, killing innocent citizens. But Americans are also reeling because their interests across the Gulf, the Middle East, are also, I think, is gone. 99% of their interests, air bases and other interests. Now, Iran is now targeting multinational businesses from America that are operating in the Middle East. They are targeting them. And all these things are American interests. And just yesterday, we all saw what happened when America is threatening of going on a ground troops attack. What Iran is also bringing down their fighter jets. The picture I saw, if it's true, I think the two pilots, one was able to rescue by the American operation rescue team, but the Iranians have captured one of the pilots. I saw the video. That is, if it's true, I can't confirm. But if that is true, so you ask yourself, what is the end game? And so far, nobody need to tell. I don't want to go into the details of this, like the way American thought, maybe could have just finished and get Iran at their knees at the moment. I think they have to rethinking and replanning. But if you have a president who can give about 100 tweets within an hour, then you could now imagine where we are at the moment. And I think that I initially was a fan of Donald Trump, but I think I have deserted him because of this Iran conflict. I don't really like it. But SENA, if you don't have a plan, you don't have an end game, you see, you will just be dancing, just like America is now dancing. But it is coming clearer that they can't defeat Iran as they want, and Iran is also capable of defending themselves. And so far, some of us and other people didn't even think Iran could even withstand this pressure up to this point. But you could see it clearly, and the people are not relenting. When they say, come for negotiation, they say, no, we don't want negotiation. We want to see the end of the war, and also bringing out their conditions for America to also agree upon. But it is about us. But if we look at it critically, I think Iran is also, even though they are still in the process, in the war, they are still also gaining. Now, I think the passage of the Strait of Hormuz was free. But now I think that any ship that will country that will get a ship pass, you have to negotiate with the Iranian people. And I'm told and I understand now, it is not for free. You have to pay money before it passes. So that is also, they are also raking in revenue. But what about us who are not involved, but we are feeling the impact? I hope you are getting the argument. So it is, I don't like what is going on. And I would have wished that today, at the end of this program, it will stop. I hope you are getting the argument. But I always ask myself, what apart, maybe Trump has a hidden motive. I don't know. Other than that, I can't understand. But let me also say it. Israel. So when they cough, Americans will also have to cough. Because now nobody is talking about nuclear something about Iran. Nobody is talking about it now. It's a long time you've heard Donald Trump or Israeli Benjamin Netanyahu talking about nuclear development, Iran nuclear development. So now you ask yourself, what is now the interest? Why are they in the war? Why have they engaged in it still up to now? And now look at the distraction. But I'm also, to some extent, I'm happy if you look at it, how far Israel have paid the price. And American itself. So looking at it, I think America want to even withdraw, but I think that it is now, the difficulty now to Donald Trump is how to withdraw from this war. That is what I have come to realize. But if you don't listen to advice, these are some of the things you engage. Looking at, he has now have challenges with his top military generals in America and others. Because let's even look at it. If you look at the terrain, and you are taking these people to ground war, innocent military officers, even though they have swore and pledged to defend, but it's not going to be easy when you look at the terrain. And look, since yesterday, look at what is happening. Look at what is happening. So you ask Donald Trump, you don't know what is it. It's unfortunate. We wish it stopped, and it must stop, because we can't continue. If it continues, we are going to pay the price, just like it has started. Increases in oil prices is going to affect everything in this country. Transportation will go up. If transportation goes up, it's going to affect commodities. And commodities prices will go up, and at the end of the day, who suffer? It is the final consumer, the ordinary Ghanaian, that will suffer. So because of some of these reasons, we wouldn't wish that it will go. It has to stop. It has to stop. But America has to stop this war. But I really don't know what their game plan is or what they want to achieve at the end of the day. Maybe it's hidden, it's remote, but at the end of the day, I think we'll know. But now you see Trump crying and said they can break into Strait of Hormuz and take Iran oil. And I started earlier saying that it is not for, it is the oil, it is Iran oil that America is after. It is not about this nuclear thing. So when they hit them, you see, he has to come out to say, to confess that they can break the Strait of Hormuz. If that can happen, whether that will be possible, we are yet to see, and take Iran oil. So if you are taking the oil, why are you taking the oil? Taking it too? Are you buying it? Or you are taking it forcefully, you are stealing it? Or you are getting the argument? But I think it's unfortunate, and I don't think that it should continue. But I think conclusively, America is paying the price, and they underrated the people of Iran, and they think they can use within this short period to get a regime change in Iran, which initially I said is not true. You can't have 40-something years old regime, and you want to use just a few months to effect that change. No, you may kill some of the leaders, but I just like you've mentioned, the succession, they were apt. Immediately, many Mujitaba came in, you are killing, they are replacing. So it means that they know what they are doing. You can't just break them as America thought under Trump.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Of course, we are discussing the latest on the war against Iran. Now, this is Reuters. Downplaying spell new peril for Trump as Tehran hunts missing U.S. pilot. And it says that Iranian forces were hunting for a missing U.S. pilot on Saturday from one of two warplanes downed over Iran and Gulf, raising the stakes for Washington as the war entered its 6th week with scant prospect of peace talks in sight. Lawyer.
So, and I wish you a very good morning, happy. Today is meant to be a holy Saturday. That's why I'm in white. Wish Mujib, I think about coming to the UP. I think about coming to the UP because you are clearly wasting your time. And hello, Kuziban, good morning. Always a privilege and pleasure to share this platform with you. You know, one of the ironies of warfare, you know, a war, when two parties are at war, or a war constitutes a number of battles. So technically, you know, right now, South Korea and North Korea are technically at war. I don't think they've engaged for a very long time, but a war constitutes numerous battles. And the thinking is that, oh, when you win a lot of those battles, then you win the war. But there have been few instances where people have won the battles and yet have lost the war. I think this is what, in my opinion, is happening in this conflict between the USA, Israel, and Iran. My personal view is that it looks like America is losing the war. Yes, they may have succeeded in bombing. I can't use the language on this platform, but for the last time he said he was bombing Iran back into the Stone Ages. But clearly, when you see the desperation for peace talks, when you look at the impact of this war on very, let's say, age-long alliances that the US had, if you look at how it's impacting the economy, and when you consider the geopolitical shake-up that had already started, you understand, probably this war may hasten the change, then my personal view is that from where I'm sitting as of today, I think America is losing the war. And if you're a student of politics, I think for me, one of the classical examples is when Napoleon Bonaparte in 1812 decided to attack Russia. No, they were at war with England, and I think Russia wouldn't bend, so he decided to amass the biggest army, one of the biggest armies ever seen, to attack Russia. And at that time, Russia couldn't have won a conventional war against the might of Napoleon Bonaparte. So what did Russia do? Russia decided that they were not going to engage Napoleon in a conventional warfare, because then they were not going to survive. So they took the strategy of subjecting Napoleon to a test of their endurance. So they retreated far into the east, actually destroyed their crops. And if you know what the essence of Moscow to a typical Russian, bent Moscow down. In fact, there was indeed one battle of Borodino, and the battle that is recorded as one of the bloodiest days in warfare. Napoleon Bonaparte won the battle, but lost over 10,000 of his men. You understand? And it got to a point when Napoleon was entered Moscow. There was nobody in Moscow. They actually bent Moscow down in the heart of the winter. And Napoleon got to a stage where he was begging for peace talks. And Russia refused to give him that peace talk. And that devastating defeat in that war was the beginning of the fall of Napoleon. That led to his final loss in Waterloo. I think America finds itself in a similar situation. Because Iran has decided, listen, I'm not going to fight you in the conventional warfare. I won't give you opportunity to be using all the so-called, what's it called, ammunition you have amassed over time. But let's see how you can endure. Let's see how you can endure if I close down the Strait of Hormuz. Let's see how you endure if I attack your interests in the Gulf regions. Let's see how you endure. And right now, America finds itself in a very, very difficult position. Do we pull out and face the ridicule of the world? Or do we stay and prolong this confusion? And America will find itself in this position because, in my opinion, they cannot justify why they are in this war in the first place. They've allowed themselves to be hoodwinked by the interest of Bibi Netanyahu into entering into this war. And see, Donald Trump is not the first leader to have faced this attempt by Benjamin Netanyahu to engage in this war against Iran. He made a case for the need to attack Iran to Barack Obama. Obama didn't fall for it. Obama didn't fall for that attempt. I think he made the same attempt at Biden. Biden that Trump and myself would love to call Sleepy Joe. But Sleepy Joe was far awake to Netanyahu's of manipulation. And he didn't fall for this. And I'm sure both of them were guided by history. Because in 1980, a year after the Islamic Revolution in Iran, America supported Iraq to attack Iran in what we call a conventional warfare. Give them ammunition, give them intelligence. And they were routed. And incidents or attempts by the US to deal with the Islamic Revolution and how it impacted and embarrassed the USA has led them to take certain decisions together with Israel. That, in my opinion, is the cause for all the confusion in the Middle East. For instance, an argument has been made that Hezbollah is funded by Iran. By 1980, there was no Hezbollah. Hezbollah was founded in 1982. Why? Why was Hezbollah founded? Hezbollah was founded because Israel attacked Lebanon. And the argument was that Lebanon was being used as a base by the then PLO to attack their citizens and their interests around the Galilee areas. You understand? Now you know that Lebanon has some Shia Muslims. And so Hezbollah was formed as a consequence of these attacks on Lebanon. To what end? To protect themselves. You get? So, same Hamas. Why was Hamas also formed? Because when you understand the basic, because prior to 1982, these so-called terrorist groups were not there. Because as of today, Hezbollah is even a political party, I think. You understand? And all of these entities, bodies, that Israel used as a justification in their claim that Iran is an existential threat on them, were formed as a consequence of Israel's aggression on its neighbors, Lebanon, Palestine. But for the aggression of Israel, probably these groups wouldn't have been formed in the first place. And you see, what is happening? What has happened, I think for a very long time, especially after the Islamic Revolution, me question all the principles of diplomacy, principles of international law, that the creation of the UN was meant to enforce, more or less. What happened to the principle of sovereignty? What happened to the principle of if a coup d'etat is successful, then it is legal? That's one of the first topics. When you go to law school, first year, constitution, the first topic is what is the constitution. The second topic is coup d'etat. And one of the classical examples they give in your understanding of a coup d'etat is the American Revolution. That's one of the classical examples they give. Because it says the American Revolution was a coup d'etat. And once it's successful, it is legal. And so, all these attacks on Iran based on the 1979 revolution is an attack on all these principles that they caused us to more or less believe. And the fact that when you study constitutional law, coup d'etat, the first classical example is the American Revolution. The right of people to self-determination. In 1945, after the Second World War, America led the creation of the UN. And it started way before 1945. It started during the First World War by their president, Woodrow Wilson. That led to the creation of the International League of Nations. But that body didn't succeed. But they carried the idea into the creation of the UN. And one of the fundamental principles espoused in the UN is what the principle of sovereignty, the principle or an acceptance by the Committee of Nations that the only reason under which you can justify the use of force is where what you ought to defend yourself. America itself, by their laws, says that what you cannot enter into a war unless that war is sanctioned by Congress. And so, in how this war has been fashioned, it tells me that we are in an international community where there's no regard for principle. And that what pushes international diplomacy or is self-interest. And it's evident in how, in what is happening in Iran. But the consequence of what the US is doing is very dire. Because after 1945, after the Second World War, two major groups were formed. The first group formed was the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And then the Warsaw Pact was also formed. I think the Warsaw Pact died together with what's called the USSR in 1990. And after that, when the world became more or less a one superpower, NATO seemed to be impregnable, and the union seemed to be one that was going to live forever. To the extent that countries that were in the SWAL Warsaw Pact were making applications to join NATO. To the extent even Ukraine. And when I understand the relation between Ukraine and Russia and goes way back, to think that Ukraine would even attempt to join NATO showed you the impression about the sustainability of that alliance was perceived to be. And yet that alliance, in my opinion, is all but dead. Because the European allies refuse to join in this war. Why? Because it is a senseless war. You can't justify this. You cannot. And you see, it tells you how America has changed. Because I think in 1954, when Israel managed to convince England, the UK, and France to join them to attack what's called Egypt and take over the Suez Canal. That action failed. Why? Because the American president then, Dwight Eisenhower, who was also the commanding general of the Allied forces, recognizing the power America had then in the geopolitics of the world, ordered England and France and Israel to leave the canal immediately. Otherwise, he was going to dump the pound sterling, which at that time was about the most powerful currency. What was driving Dwight Eisenhower? Probably because he had faced warfare and had seen the dangers of warfare, having been general in the Second World War. And being a man driven by principle, I always say that sometimes when they are mentioning the great American presidents, he's not given enough credit. He might play his role in the Cold War and all those, but I think that president is not given enough credit. But what have we seen since Lyndon B. Johnson? It's in succession of American presidents who are driven not by principle, but by self-interest. And this powerful nation that represents the view that people who were nobodies can forge a country that can become them. Because you see, when you consider the USA is simply a country made up of people originally who fled a feudal Europe. So the people who in the feudal system were supposed to be nobodies. They didn't have title, were the lowest rank in the social structure in Europe, fled Western Europe because they were being oppressed in terms of their rights to follow their own religion. They were being oppressed economically. They were dying due to hunger. Fled and came to the new land and more or less perpetrated the same, what's it called? This disadvantaged situation they found themselves in. Yet they managed to build a country that has become, or that became, one of the most powerful nations. You understand? And yet they are repeating the same so-called disadvantaged actions that led them to flee Western Europe in the same at the same time. For me, if you consider that NATO is now under serious threat, and if you put it in the context of the rise of China, a new world order is being rewritten. If you don't see it, then you don't understand the world. Because you can see it clearly. And some of us believe that the only reason why so Netanyahu has his own interests, America probably saw Iran as a chance to probably deal an indirect attack on China and the rise of China. Probably. And from where I'm sitting, when history is being written, sometimes, and when they want to state example of a situation where you may seemingly have won a number of battles, but will lose the war emphatically, then they will point their fingers to this war. And that's why more than 75% of the US citizens are against the war. And we say republic. Re means the king, and public is the people. So if you're a republic, and if over 75% of the sovereign public are saying that this war is senseless, now what justification? Right, do you know the confusion with Trump right now? This year they'll be having the midterm elections. The midterm elections, you understand? The extent of public opinion against this senseless war means that it's likely that his party will lose radically, as in the midterm elections. And himself, in fact, he said it. When he loses, there's a likelihood that they'll bring impeachment proceedings against him. That's his confusion right now. And that's why he seems to be, let's have peace talks, let's have peace talks. Now, when you consider the bigger picture, the fact that the new world order is being rewritten, then it makes the call for reparation very critical. And that's why I'm surprised that some people will not see, as in when they are considering reparation, they look at it from just one angle. Because in the course of history, after the 15th century, when the current system we have was initiated, a system that placed us black people right at the bottom of the structure, and psychologically took actions that meant that we were considered to be chattel. An action that has led to our inability to partake in very critical revolutions that has changed the course of history, like the Industrial Revolution. An action that has led to the erasure of our culture. I'm called Andrew. And the only reason why I have not changed my name is respect for my father, because I'm an African and we don't name ourselves. Yeah, but none of my children has an English name. I'm telling you. Because we've lost identity. I have a mate, I don't call his name. He's a professor at the University of Ghana right now. He was my junior at Geopolitical school, but we were mates at the Faculty of Law and Law School. He went to university outside. When his roommate saw his name there, the guy actually thought that he was a white American. And then only to meet a black man, and the black man was not even American, he was a black man from Ghana. You understand? So by your name, you don't even have an identity. Now, what the call for reparation does is, for the first time, it is a call that is asking Africans to take part in the rewriting, the reshaping of the current world order. When we are calling for African unity, it is a recognition that as individual African countries, we do not have the muscle to impact in this reshaping of the new world order. Because the world order is being shaped. And it's so glaring that it will cause Donald Trump and the USA to take the actions, the missteps they've taken in Iran. You understand? So, you see, our politicians should sit down, reflect, and see this call for reparation in the light of what it means, the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that for the first time, because when the Second World War was done, Ghana was part of Britain. Our flag was a Union Jack. Togo was part of, at that time, France. Part was English. Benin was part of France. Nigeria was part of England. And because of that, we did not partake in the reshaping of that world order, to the extent that we do not have a continent as big as Africa, do not have a representation on the UN. Because we did not take part and because we were not united, great African leaders have been killed in this struggle. Our own Kwame Nkrumah. See what was done to Patrice Lumumba and all the other great African leaders. You understand? So for me, I see a rewriting of the world order, and I see an opportunity for us here in Africa, that if there's a time for us to revisit the issue of African unity, the time is now, so that we place ourselves in the position to partake in the rewriting of the world order, which is happening before our very eyes. Because if we do not do that, posterity will never forgive us. Because we find ourselves in a very special time, this dispensation. You understand? So, yes, the state of the war right now, in my opinion, clearly tells me that, listen, the US have allowed themselves to be manipulated by Benjamin Netanyahu to enter this war. The US finds itself in a position where they do not know whether to go or to come. That you see what happens to you when your politics is not driven by the interest of the nation, but is driven by your selfish interest. You understand? And because of this, one of the biggest alliances they formed is on the verge of collapsing. But for us in Ghana, and I'm saying for us in Ghana because we are the leaders of this Pan-African agenda, whether you like it or not. We are the leaders because of the role our own Kwame Nkrumah took. It's placed Ghana in a very special position. Fortunately, we have a president now who understands the position of Ghana, who understands the geopolitics. Understand? And he's leading this reparation effort because of what it means. Understand? Which obviously should include the union, the unity, the real unity of Africa. Let us take this opportunity to take part in this rewriting of the world order. And to all the people who are talking whatever against the reparation, probably it's because of lack of knowledge. The Bible says that for lack of knowledge, my people perish. So if you don't have knowledge, then I recommend that you go and look for the book on reparation written by our own Kwesi Pratt. Get educated. Let it shape your mind and recognize yourself as an African and see the opportunity, you understand, for us to seize this opportunity to force Africa to be on the table of the Community of Nations and rewrite this new world order which is happening. So for me, I like to end here, and I say that posterity will not forgive our generation if we do not see this opportunity and partake in the rewriting of the world order, which is happening and is going to happen. I end here.
Thank you very much. Of course, we are discussing the current state of the war on Iran. That is how the war, that's what happened. They woke up one morning, they were being bombarded, their leaders were being killed. They had to respond, and they have been responding. They insist that this war must continue and conclude when they also feel like. Anyway, Hamza Suini is next. Nice to see you.
Nice to be on this show once again. Good morning to you. Good morning to Rango and of course my brothers who are in one way can best be described as part of the socialist movement, regardless of the political party my brother belongs to. You come to Allow this, Anna. I think that I've been away for over a month now, largely because of a religious commitment on one hand, because we're going through the Ramadan period, and as a young man who still holds his spiritual life very dear, I thought that it was an opportune time for me to reflect on my spiritual life and most importantly see how I could perfect that. And so it also afforded me the opportunity to spend some time with my family and get to play around with my kids for a while, at least before returning home. And so I have missed many of the discussions that appear to be shaping our political landscape as a country. But in terms of my own views on them, but as far as monitoring from abroad is concerned, I think that I did my bit. I monitored quite significantly, and I was impressed by the nature of the ruling government's communications team in terms of the kind of spirited education they provided to many of the issues that shaped or continues to shape our political landscape. But on the issue of Iran, I think that I monitored that more than any other issue. Largely because of maybe my academic training. And that's why I would want to start from where my brother ended in relation to the posture of the international organizations today. And the implications of the war on our so-called international organizations designed, especially after the Second World War, with the objective of safeguarding what many of them would like to call the modern state. And Alhaji SENA, this takes me back to my first year when I was doing my master's in international political economy, where we were introduced to the foundations of international political economy. And after that lecture, I came to one conclusion, that the bane of the international order or global order is rooted in one simple fact that Karl Marx spoke about several centuries ago, and that is greed, driven by capitalism. I remember quite clearly that the American school of thought in terms of international political economy and the stature of states was to the effect that indeed to understand the global order and to appreciate the essence of capitalism, one needed to focus on the state because the state was the driver of the capitalist system. And I think that the United Kingdom school of thought, that was largely driven by a journalist, like our senior comrade Yakwesi Brown, who for his works, unfortunately we do not have such opportunities in this country, and that is one discussion we need to have as a country again. Not because he entered academia through the strict line of being trained first with a degree, then masters, and then subsequently a PhD. she was a journalist who had written so many articles on the international economic order and international relations in particular, and became the lead voice of the United Kingdom in terms of his contribution to the theory, to the literature of international political economy. Susan Strange, a journalist. And she was being sought after by celebrated universities in the United Kingdom. Institutions like King's College London, London School of Economics, and the likes. Because she shaped that discourse. And there's a need for this country, and most importantly, for Africa to begin to take advantage of many of these contributions. My brother made references to the book written by Uncle Kusipa, Reparations. I can assure you that you will go to many of our political science departments, and even lecturers tasked with the responsibility of shaping minds haven't had the opportunity of reading that book. But when it comes to his experience and active participation, as far as the political landscape is concerned in this country, he stands tall than many of those with the responsibility of shaping our future minds, as far as these institutions are concerned. So how do we take advantage of many of these contributions? And you see, that is a discussion for another day. But Susan Strange made one important diagnosis of the international economic order. And what was that? It was about the fact that in understanding the international economic order, there is the need for us to understand that even the state itself is a subject of an international order that it may have no control over. Because of the nature of modern trends. What it simply means is that capitalism will take a life of its own that even the so-called developed nations themselves will not be able to control. And so, deducing from her reasoning, I came to one conclusion, that even the initial position of Karl Marx to the effect that a point in time will come where the proletariat in society will overthrow the capitalist system, I began having doubts about that conclusion. You know why? Because reading extensively about the international economic order and the possibility that even states themselves would eventually lose control to capitalist theoretical underpinnings and practical underpinnings, I became convinced that the capitalist system by itself will be the first organ that will start its own destruction. And the proletariat would have no option but to get involved in reshaping a world. Not that revolution would not be driven by the proletariat in society. And that is where we are going. And a critical analysis of this war gives that picture. Go back to 1951 when Mossadegh was prime minister. That was when this issue started. And that's why I'm telling you that it's rooted in capitalism. And the fact that capitalism is on a tangent of self-destruction. And this war presents that vividly. 1951, everyone knows that Mossadegh's policies of nationalization of the oil fields in Iran became practically uncomfortable to the United Kingdom in particular, because they at the time had their state companies involved in the oil and gas sector in Iran. The foremost oil and gas company was BP. I think then it was not called BP, it was called another company or another name. Alhaji&Alhaji, that was when it all started. So when the nationalization drive started, it sought to give credence to Russia's communism agenda and by far threatened the United States' own ideals of what? Capitalism. And they also called liberal society. And so it was easier for the United Kingdom to garner the support of the United States of America. Because America had something in it that was rooted in political dominance against the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Then United Kingdom was in need for the economic benefits that they were likely to derive from Iran. And when it comes to the United Kingdom, that's why I've always argued that it is a silent superpower, not the United States. They know how to pursue their economic interests under a certain facade of deception that makes even the avowed critic of the United States change his views when it comes to the poster of the United Kingdom and likely support their ideas. And so that economic drive became the foundation of how even the United States was pulled into the war. Subsequently, it took a life of its own. It led to the overthrow of Mossadegh. Later on, the CIA declassified documents indicated in clear language that indeed the United States of America, with the help of its partners, they were instrumental in taking Mossadegh out of power and planted into the Iranian system their own puppet in the person of Reza, right?
Shah, yeah, Shah.
Called the Shah subsequently. And so that was the political and economic order they wanted against nationalization. And what was the objective of nationalization? It was simply intended to empower the good people of Iran. And if indeed Western democracy has as a core principle empowerment of the populace, then I see no reason why the United States of America would have been against such a policy intervention by Mossadegh. And that is the self-interest, capitalist interest that they were after. And so that was how they destabilized Iran. Then, if truly Western democracy is about power to the people, in no time, Reza, who was pursuing policies that were Western in nature and that sought to line the pockets of the United Kingdom and that of the United States of America, suddenly were singled out by his own people. And for the first time in several decades, Iran had a historic revolution that led to the removal of Reza from power. Not a military coup. People's power, like what we experienced not long ago in the Middle East.
Yeah.
People's power in Iran. What can be more a manifestation of democracy than that? Especially even up to date, the United States of America is not able to tell us that they were instrumental in instigating that revolution. So that tells you that indeed the revolution that brought Ali Khamenei to power was actually a revolution rooted in the aspirations of the good people of Iran. And there can be nothing more democratic than that. They also started their policies of protecting the sovereignty of the People's Republic of Iran, or Islamic Republic of Iran, I should put it now. But America wouldn't have it. Because, like I've indicated, America's economic interest in the Middle East is known. And Iran's posture, if Iran is allowed to succeed, sends a certain signal to other Middle Eastern countries about the possibility of independence and the ability to be able to go the long haul without even the influence of the United States of America. And without compromising the security architecture of that region by handing same to the United States of America. So it is in the political interest and economic interest of the United States of America to enter into Iran. And that is all there is to it. You see, as for these arguments that, oh, it is Netanyahu, Israel, who is championing it, blah, 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 that is for another day. I have always argued, and I'll continue to argue, that the day even Netanyahu himself would come to appreciate that he's a part of, is that a word? Put up.
Yeah.
In this whole business, it's coming. It's coming. America believes in the politics of deception. They will tell you that they are intervening because of Israel. Their commentators will tell you that it is about nuclear threat to the stability of the region and the economic interests of America and the likes in the region. They will tell you that, oh, some will tell that it is Netanyahu who convinced Trump to get involved. But America is a system. And no matter what they tell us using the media, we must never shift our eyeball away from that system. The system moves. The only difference is that the personalities determine the pace of movement of the system at any given time. But America always has a consistent goal. So you may see under a democratic president, a Democrat as a president, you may see that the system slows. Yeah. Under Republicans, it is hastened. Yeah. But the system always eventually moves. So we need to appreciate that. And Alhaji&Alhaji, that is where we are. So when I listen to people say, oh, this another pedestrian analysis that mostly characterizes this war has to do with the attempt to give it a religious undertone. Yeah. This is not a religious conflict. Far from it. This is not a religious conflict. This is not one rooted in Christianity and Islam. Absolutely not. And I'm sure that the foundation that I have laid should clear that confusion. It is just a funny coincidence that Iran happens to be predominantly dominated by Muslims. And the United States of America, of course, is known for its projection of Christianity. Not in terms of religious conviction, but even with that as an economic motive and benefit. So it is not rooted in any religious conflict. It is simply driven by the capitalist agenda. And that brings me to your concern about the international organizations. You see, today, because of that greed, driven by United States capitalist quest to conquer and control, you've realized that it is threatening even the stability of NATO. Mm-hmm. You realize that greed, is also threatening America's relationship with, in the past, what they refer to as their partner nations. It is therefore not surprising that we hear Trump today either attacking the United Kingdom for taking a posture that it considers problematic, or attacking France. So that tells you that these are the effects and manifestations of a capital system that is about to fail. Because it will first consume its own structures that it built, and that is what is happening. This war, which is driven by greed, is beginning to threaten the fundamental institutions that were designed to bolster capitalism. NATO will not be the same after this war. The United Nations will not be the same after this war. Indeed, even prior to this war, Trump's own policies began threatening the stability and relevance of these international organizations. We have been questioning the integrity of these organizations way before as Africans. So for us, it is exciting how they themselves are beginning to appreciate the very concerns that we have been raising for decades now. the effects of capitalism driven by greed. So they have no control. Senior Council, they have no control over what is happening, unfolding. The sanctity and stability of these state institutions, of these international institutions, will continue to be under threat by their own policies and interventions. And that is what we are seeing. This is just the tip of the iceberg. But, you see, the war is fought on two fronts. And that is why when I woke up to the news that the Ayatollah was murdered, and Trump was hopeful that indeed that could be an opening, I laughed. You see, Iran is using this war to communicate two things to the world. The first is that regardless of the propaganda machinery of the West, true power, true political and economic power, did not reside in the Ayatollah. That indeed true power, political power and economic power, resided in the good people of Iran. And that the revolution lives in the hearts of the Iranian people. And Ayatollah was a symbolic manifestation of the desires as far as that revolution is concerned. So you taking away that symbolic representation of a desire for self-governance and self-control does not necessarily mean a dismantling of that revolutionary undertow. And that was the message they gave through this war. So Ayatollah is there. But the revolution continues. Because he was not the revolution. The good people of Iran are the revolution. It is in their homes. It is in their hearts. He was simply a symbol of communication to the international community about the desires of the people. That is why even as we continue to take out key leaders in their language, people they brand as key leaders, they still find it extremely difficult to penetrate Iran. Because the people are the revolution. And I'm sure by now, Trump would have learned that hard lesson. That is true democracy. Because remember, when the war started, he said that it was going to be a quick one. Quick one. Because he thought that Ayatollah was a revolution. The military commanders they were targeting, they thought they were the revolution. They have no idea that the entirety of Iran is a revolution. So that's the first front. First realization. The second realization has to do with the tact of Iran in this war. Iran knows that America places no premium on human lives. Iran knows that the only God America worships and the West is the economic God. Is money. And people are missing that important point. And the fundamental principle of war is that to succeed, you must know the strength of your opponent and hit them. So Iran knows that America has no respect for human lives. Not just human lives anywhere, but even human lives of the American people. So killing Americans will do nothing to the establishment in America because they don't care. They have demonstrated severally that when it comes to human life, they place no premium on it. All what you see is a facade rooted in deception. This idea of human rights. America has no regard for human rights when it comes to its economic interest. And Iran knows this. It is the reason why when the United States of America was interested in killing leaders of Iran, Iran focused on economic infrastructure of the United States of America. Because they understand that even the murder of Trump will do nothing to the American people and their objectives. But when you begin to touch their gods, then they will begin to feel the impact of the war and extend invitations for others to get involved. So it's not the matter of how many people in the US have died. It is the crippling of the United States of America and their economy. And interestingly, even their NATO colleagues appreciate this. And they know, especially those of us who have had the opportunity of being educated by them in classrooms as far as political science is concerned and international relations. We know that the United States of America will not remain superpower forever. And that brings to focus my earlier submission that even the system itself will consume the system.
Yeah.
So many of these NATO partners are angling and hoping for United States of America's power to be checked. It is their desire, hidden desire. And that time is coming. So why stand on the way? Because Iran is not killing people. America's power is rooted in its economic power. So go after it. Yeah. Put them in check. You think many of these NATO partners will be willing to interfere with such a system that also guarantees their own safety and ensure that they do not become instruments in the hands of the United States? Look at how he's speaking to their leaders. You think that Trump has that authority, even not because of the authority of the country he represents, to challenge many of them, even in terms of IQ level. So my brother, you see, Iran knows what they are interested in. You cannot measure the successes of Iran based on the number of communities they have destroyed in America or the number of American soldiers they have killed or captured. You can measure the impact of this war on the economic infrastructure they are targeting. As we speak today, they have made the Middle East unsafe for American businesses. Is that not a fact? Who is losing more? As we speak today, Trump has a ball in his hand, moving from country to country, seeking alliance to intervene in the Strait of Hormuz. Why do you think he's doing that? But on a daily basis, we wake up to exceptions that Iran gives to other countries to pass through the Strait. That is power. That is real power, power of the people. And so, Alhaji&Alhaji, it is disheartening that so many people have to die. But the unfortunate reality is that this will provide a litmus test for the world in terms of how we need to proceed when it comes to relations with each other. And most importantly, it also brings into perspective discussions on capitalism and communism. To what end should be the question we should be asking when it comes to our economic desires. To what end? And it is not surprising that the likes of Saudi Arabia and other countries have also learned the art of diplomacy very well. I'm sure if America had its way, by now Saudi Arabia, Iran, Kuwait, Qatar and co. would have been hitting Iran too. But no matter how you treat them and accuse them of, as nations, not being sympathetic to the Iranian cause, the decision to hold back so far also tells you the tact these countries are displaying and their appreciation of the global order. Because because they could have retaliated.
Yeah.
They held back. Not necessarily out of fear for Iran, but because they have come to realize that this has been a game for decades. And we must also learn to play that game. Is it therefore surprising that this is the time many of them have also taken advantage of to get many deals through the United States of America? You think they are stupid? And that is the beauty of knowledge. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam charged all followers of the Islamic faith to go and seek knowledge wherever it is. Because a time will come that the international order will be rooted in a knowledge game. That is where we are. So I can get your own wisdom and use same against you. And that is exactly what many of those countries in the Middle East are doing. So as for the statements threatening Iran, raising their displeasure, communicating how angry they are, for how long now have they retaliated? And so, Alhaji, for us in Africa, I'm going to end on this note, we would continue to monitor the events. Hopefully, if for nothing at all, what we can do from where we sit is to point out the hypocrisy of the Western establishment, is to be concerned about human rights, especially when it comes to the innocent civilians dying on a daily basis because of this senseless intervention in Iraq. And I think that we all, regardless of where you are, whether it is a Facebook post, it is a Twitter post, Instagram, TikTok, wherever, let your voice of condemnation be heard against the United States of America. And like Senior Counsel indicated, over 70% of the citizens of the United States of America are themselves not in favor of this war. What kind of democracy is that if a single man determines, with the help of some supporting staff, determines which country to attack in the name of the good people of America? Yeah. Is that democracy? That is no democracy. Yeah. And then again, this is where I respect the Constitution of the United Kingdom, even when it comes to the declaration of war. Many have issues with the monarchy. But if you know the constitutional architecture of the United Kingdom, you will know that, especially after Tony Blair's senseless engagement with the United States of America, it has become practically difficult for any sitting prime minister to take the nation on such a funny ride in the name of protecting global peace. And that is why this Labour Prime Minister, is it? I hope I got it right. Keir Starmer. I always get it wrong. Why it is difficult for him to declare support. Because the system will not support such a declaration, knowing what they went through under Tony Blair and George Bush. So we wish those who fight for justice well. And we cannot help on this platform but to wish the good people of Iran well in their collective desire to protect their sovereignty and defend their revolution.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just 2 comments on Facebook, then I'll go to Comrade Pratt. This is Yusuf Mohammed, who says, Sena, we have seen the fall of superpower nations, and it came through a foolhardy move. US and Israel are not exceptions, as many people are convinced of their military might. As we speak now, the spirit of superpower has left these nations, so the fall of the US and Israel is here. Kamal Dokurogwe Ibrahim is joining us. Says, on the war waged by the US and Israel against Iran, 2 issues get apparent with time. First of all, the unbelievable degree of stupidity on the part of Donald Trump to support Israel on such a reckless war. And secondly, the sadistic tendencies of Benjamin Netanyahu. My wish is that these two are captured and put in, he said, a human zoo that will be justice. Undoubtedly, many across the world will like to visit such a zoo, regardless of the fee. Anyway, history teaches us that Iran, though one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations dating back to the 5th millennium BC, has never been defeated in any war by external forces. I am convinced this current war won't be an exception. What might happen at the end of the day is regime change in Israel and US. Indeed, time will tell. Thank you. There's Nasser Mohammed says, America is controlled completely by Israel and the Jewish lobbies. He says, people are seeing it now, but they're literally helpless. Anyone bold enough to raise their voice are first labeled anti-Semitic. If that is not enough to stop you, they destroy you, either through business or smear campaigns. America, and for that matter, all of us, are in trouble from the lobby. Mr. Pratt.
Well, I am fully convinced that history will see this war as the most useless and senseless war. And I'm fully convinced about that. Of all the wars that have happened in history, of the First World War, of the Second World War, and so on, this war will be recorded as the most senseless and useless war ever waged. Why do I say that? First, there is Donald Trump, who is sitting in the United States of America and actually claiming that he's going to bomb Iran for fun. The President of the United States of America says he's going to drop bombs on Iran for fun, for entertainment, to entertain himself. I didn't say it, he said it. He's going to bomb Iran for fun, to entertain himself. Unbelievable. And the world is tolerating this. The American people, even though the figures show, the statistics show, that more than 70% of them do not approve this war, they haven't done anything to remove this aberration from power. And that's a serious problem. Now, let's look at the pretense at seriousness. Let's drop this claim that, you know, the President of the United States is bombing Iran for fun. Let's look at the pretentious claim. One, the US and Israel say that they are waging this war against Iran to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. How is this sensible? Why? One, even if Iran was pursuing a nuclear weapon, it would not be the first nation in the world to pursue a nuclear weapon. Indeed, the US itself produces and stockpiles nuclear weapons. Israel produces and stockpiles nuclear weapons. India produces and stockpiles nuclear weapons. There is Pakistan, which also has nuclear weapons. Then there's the Democratic Republic of Korea, which has nuclear weapons, and I can continue. Many countries have the weapon. So what is the justification for other countries having the weapon and other countries not having the weapon? It simply doesn't make sense. Why should Israel have nuclear weapons and Iran cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons? I cannot understand. Okay. But let's move from there. You see, Iran has persistently, over the last 30 years, assured the world that it has no intention of making a nuclear weapon. In fact, the Ayatollah Khomeini had actually issued a fatwa against the production and possession of nuclear weapons. Iran just did not make a declaration that it has no intention of making a nuclear weapon and keeping nuclear weapons. Iran sat down with the international community and agreed that, look, this is our nuclear program. We are going to open our doors for inspection. Iran signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and opened its doors for inspection. In fact, the International Atomic Energy Agency was constantly inspecting Iran's nuclear facilities and writing reports for the consideration of the UN, for the consideration of the world. So Iran was open about its nuclear program. The agreement which enabled the International Atomic Energy Agency to be inspecting Iran's facility was thrown out of the window when Donald Trump assumed power. Donald Trump said he didn't like the agreement. He threw it out of the window. Again, I'm wondering why. The nuclear facility could be inspected by experts. It was under the control of the UN and so on. So we could insist, we could check and make sure that Iran lived by its word of not producing a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump, the agreement which enabled that to happen, was torn up by Donald Trump, who is today waging a war in collaboration with Netanyahu in order to prevent the creation and stockpiling of nuclear weapons. I'm totally confused. I mean, how can anybody understand this? Shocking. But you see, this brings into question the history of the Iranian nuclear program. This is a program which began in 1957. The Iranian nuclear program began in 1957. Between 1957 and 1979, neither Israel nor the US had any problem with the Iran nuclear program. Why? Because the program was under the control of the US. The Iranian nuclear program was actually started with the assistance of the United States of America. The major contractors to the program were France, Germany, and Britain, and all of them contributed towards establishing the Iranian nuclear program. Okay? Now, Israel, especially Netanyahu, has over the last 11 years constantly been saying that Iran was on the verge of the production of a nuclear weapon for 11 years. Doesn't make sense. But that's the claim that Netanyahu had been making consistently for 11 years. Now, the other thing which is shocking is simply the fact that the United States and Israel conspired and attacked the nuclear facilities of Iran last year. At the end of that attack, both the US and Israel said they had obliterated Iran's capacity to produce a nuclear weapon. Last year, only last year, Donald Trump boasted that Iran's ability to produce a nuclear weapon had been destroyed forever. So why wage the war now on this excuse that Iran was producing a nuclear weapon? Why? When you have claimed that you've obliterated their capacity to make a nuclear weapon. Now, you see, right now, Iran is able to enrich uranium up to 60%. Up to 60%. That's what the claim is. In fact, before 1979, Iran was able to enrich uranium up to 95% with the U.S. involvement. So what is happening? Incredible. I mean, I cannot understand. Now, the U.S. and Israel launched a surprise attack on Iran at a time when Iran was at the negotiating table. When Iran said, look, let's talk. Let's find a solution to this problem. Let us all agree on what steps to take so that you can be sure that we are not producing a nuclear weapon. Indeed, the mediators in that talks had announced that they were very close to an agreement. Donald Trump himself had boasted that an agreement was close by, and yet they launched this attack. So it cannot be that this attack was launched in order to prevent Iran from producing a nuclear weapon. It cannot be. There's no basis for that assertion. But you see, what is interesting is that on February 28th, when they launched the attack against Iran, one of the first people who was killed in this attack was Imam Khomeini, who had insisted that Iran should never produce a nuclear weapon, who had actually issued a fatwa that the production of a nuclear weapon was a sin against God, the man they killed. So we are sitting back and we are wondering, what is happening? Then all of a sudden, the reason for attacking Iran changes. And what is the new reason? The new reason is that it is for regime change. And I'm sitting back and wondering how some government can decide that they don't want somebody's government, some country's government, and therefore that government must be removed. What audacity, what arrogance, unbelievable arrogance. I mean, look, Iran is a country of 90 million people. For some estimates put it at 93 million people. They cannot decide what government they want. It is Donald Trump who sits in Washington and decides who should be in government in Iran. I cannot believe it. Of course, this is not new. To be honest, this is not new. The U.S. and its allies have, over the years, played God in the world. They decided that they did not like Salvador Allende of Chile, and they killed him and replaced him with Pinochet. They did it before. Okay? They decided that they did not want Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, and they removed him through a coup d'etat. They've done it before. They decided that they did not want Patrice Lumumba of the Congo. They killed him. They dissolved his body in acid. They've done it before. They've done it all over the world. They invaded Panama, captured the head of state and took him to the United States of America. They've been doing it. What is new is that they are now doing it in our face. They are not hiding. It's brazen. Before they used to hide. Even when they were caught, they denied. Now they are doing it in our faces. They are coming. So we don't like you. We are coming. So now they can go to Venezuela and actually kidnap Maduro and take him to New York and declare to the world that Venezuelan oil is now American oil. I mean, that's the difference. They're doing it in our face. Okay? But you see, it is clear that Donald Trump and his friends in the White House and Netanyahu and so on are behaving like day nursery kids playing a video game. That's how they're behaving. Sena, how do you bring regime change? By flying into a country, dropping bombs, and killing its leaders, some of its leaders. How do you bring about regime change? Without thinking about a new leadership rooted in the population. The organizational basis of regime change did not exist. It didn't exist. So they just thought that just by dropping bombs, an opposition will be created. That opposition instantly will have a leadership. That opposition will have an organization and will be able to take over leadership. What? That's totally brainless. Brainless, completely brainless. But that's how they were thinking. That's how Donald Trump was thinking. That if he dropped a few bombs in Tehran and Isfahan and a few places, there will be regime change. Of course, now we know that there hasn't been regime change. And there is no prospect of regime change in Iran. Indeed, if there's a prospect of regime change, it's in Israel and the United States of America and not Iran. You understand? If you look at what is happening, the only prospect of regime change is in Israel and the United States of America and not Iran. But you see, the propaganda before the war was that the economic conditions are hard in Iran and that the Iranian government was oppressing its own people and so on. And then I sat back and I said, listen, yes, it is true. The Iranian currency has fallen against the dollar. Imported goods have become more expensive and so on. But who is to blame? Is it the Iranian government which has been resisting sanctions? Is it the Iranian government which has been resisting the sabotage of the economy by the United States and its friends and so on? Who should we blame from the economic conditions in Iran? Since 1979, the West has done everything possible to strangulate the Iranian Revolution, including ordering Saddam Hussein to attack Iran. Iran went through a war. War was waged on Iran. So if the people really, and the people have a right to speak, they have a right to demonstrate, I have no problems with that. If I don't have problems with that in Ghana, I cannot have any problems with that in Iran. The people have a right to speak. They have a right to protest and so on. But the protest must make sense. You understand? Who caused the hardships in Iran for which people poured into the street? It's the United States of America and its allies. They imposed the sanctions. They blocked Iran from exporting its oil. They were the people who have started a low-intensity aggression in Iran. Look, many people don't know, Iran has the largest number of PhD holders in nuclear science in the world. There's no country in the world, 90 million people, they have the highest number of PhD holders in nuclear science in the world. More than the US, more than Israel, more than Britain, more than France, and so on. They have the highest. Now, for a long time now, the Israeli intelligence has made it a point to be killing Iranian nuclear scientists. They bombed them, they killed them. In fact, at one stage, what they did was to attach bombs to their cars and then explode their cars. Some of them died with their families in it and so on. And this has been happening over a long period of time. Okay? Now, one of the claims which has been made against Iran over the years is that is an Islamic republic which discriminates against women because women are made to wear the hijab. I am not a Muslim, okay? How people dress and so on is a determination that they should be making for themselves based on their culture and so on. And I don't want to make judgment. But I know that there are more women in the universities in Iran than there are men in the universities. What is important? Access to education, or how women dress their hair, which is important. I go to Tehran. Women are driving cars. Something which is not allowed in some of the Arab countries, for which the US is body weight. The US has no problem with when women are banned from driving cars in other Arab countries. But they have a lot of worry with Iranian women who wear hijab. I can't understand. A country that has the highest, more women in the universities than men. I cannot believe that. But then all of this was thrown in as part of the justification for the attack on Iran. Indeed, Donald Trump made the statement that the demonstrators should not leave the street, they should continue demonstrating, and that help was coming. Now, I'm listening to the Western media, and the demonstrators are saying, we were deceived. Because the help that came to kill us. One of the first bombs which was dropped in a school, a girls' school. Okay? The people, most of the people who are being killed in Iran today do not belong to the Revolutionary Guards. They are not members of the family of the leadership and so on. They are bombing schools. They are bombing universities. They are bombing hospitals. 2 days ago, they actually bombed a bridge, the tallest bridge in West Asia and the Middle East. They bombed it. This was the pride of Iranian engineering. They bombed it. That bridge has not been used for any military purpose. They bombed it. Okay? So, that help that they were going to give to the people of Iran, how does that help find expression? Indeed, as a result of this war, the Iranian currency, the value of the Iranian currency has not appreciated. It hasn't appreciated at all. And that was one of the reasons for the demonstration. This war has not resolved that matter. Donald Trump and Netanyahu claim that they have won the war and that they are only doing mopping up operations. Okay? Donald Trump actually says that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards have been completely destroyed. Completely destroyed. The Navy has been destroyed. The Air Force has been destroyed. Their missile launching sites have been completely destroyed. And every time they come and tell us that the number of missiles and so on being launched at Israel and US bases in the region and so on is reducing. And yet every day, we see renewed vigor and force. So they must obviously be lying to themselves. I mean, yesterday, I went to the Iranian embassy site, to look at what was happening and so on. And the Iranian embassy in Accra claimed that 3 planes were shot down. 3 planes were shot down. Okay? So far, the US has admitted 2. Okay? One of them, one pilot or co-pilot bailed out. And as we speak, there's a frantic search for that pilot. And you see, in the search for that pilot, American troops have become more vulnerable. Because the plane which was shot down was an F-38, one of the most sophisticated planes. Now, in this rescue operation, they are having to use Apache helicopters, which fly at very low altitude and are more vulnerable to Iranian fire. The planes they are using now, because they are searching for one person, one co-pilot and so on, they have to fly at very low altitudes. And they have become very, very, very susceptible to Iranian fire. Doesn't make sense. Now, an air force which has been totally decimated, obliterated, and so on, a country whose capacity to defend itself has been completely obliterated, does not shoot down an F-38. So, obviously, they are lying to us. Of course, one of the consequences of this war has been the dramatic rise and shortage, the dramatic rise in fuel prices and shortage of fuel across the world. Everybody is focusing on that, but it is more than that. In fact, I've just come to learn that even the supply of pharmaceuticals in the world is in danger because it passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Most pharmaceuticals are produced in India, Pakistan, and so on, and they pass through the Strait of Hormuz. So the supply of pharmaceuticals is in danger. As for oil and gas, everybody knows. But in addition to this, chemical fertilizer, the supply of chemical fertilizer is also in danger. Every aspect of human life is going to suffer as a result of the closure or the partial closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Donald Trump says that he and his allies can come together and use force to open the Strait of Hormuz. I'm not a military expert, okay? But my little sense of geography just tells me how ignorant Donald Trump is. Nobody can open the Strait of Hormuz. And the French President Emmanuel Macron has said that there's no military possibility for opening the Strait of Hormuz. You know why? Because given Iran's advancement, the kind of weapons it has and so on, you can actually fire at any object in the Strait of Hormuz from any part of Iran. You can hit the Strait of Hormuz from any part of Iran. You don't have to be close. So to be able to open the Strait of Hormuz through military action, you have to achieve total dominance of the land area of Iran, which is impossible. Total dominance. You have to be everywhere. Because you can hit the Strait of Hormuz from Isfahan. You can hit it from the north. You can hit it from the west. You can hit it from the east. Everywhere. So to be able to achieve that, you need to achieve total dominance, which is impossible. So it is obvious that Donald Trump and his friends don't know what they're talking about. You know, they're acting out of total ignorance, complete ignorance. That's what is pushing them. Then there are very interesting developments. You see, France is a member of NATO. France has decided that it is not going to allow anybody to fly weapons through its territories, air territory, to Israel. It has blockaded weapon supply to Israel. France, this is France. Yeah. Spain has decided that U.S. bases in Spain would not be used. They would not permit the U.S. to use its bases in Spain to launch military attacks on Iran. Britain has refused to join the war. You understand? NATO countries have refused to join the war. Why? One, because they've been treated in the most disparaging manner. Because they were not consulted. They were not considered important enough to be consulted. When asked, Donald Trump claims that if he had told them, they would have leaked the information to Iran. He doesn't even trust them. Okay? So that's one of the issues. But most importantly, Donald Trump is not just seeking regime change in Iran. He's seeking regime change around the world. So in Britain, for example, he's supporting the far right to remove Keir Starmer from power. So Keir Starmer himself is under threat from Donald Trump. In France, the Trump administration is supporting the far right against Emmanuel Macron and his party. In Germany, he's doing the same thing. So he's deliberately subverting the leadership of his NATO allies and so on. And they cannot therefore be expected to join him in this crazy, useless war. But you see, that's not all. Donald Trump, on assumption of office, decided that he wanted the Panama Canal. He wanted the Panama Canal. He was ready to bomb his way to take over the Panama Canal. He wanted Greenland, and Greenland is part of Denmark, which is part of NATO. And Donald Trump stated very clearly that he wanted to buy Greenland, and that if they didn't sell Greenland to him, he was willing to go to war to take it. He was declaring war against a NATO member. So how do you expect NATO to support him? I mean, unbelievable. He wanted Canada as the 52nd state of the United States of America. And should I continue? And more and more and more and more. I mean, this guy has stopped thinking. This guy is not capable of thinking. And you see, Netanyahu has realized that he's driven by ego. So Netanyahu is playing with the ego of Donald Trump and pushing the world to a catastrophe. And I'm not exaggerating. The Nobel Peace Prize is awarded to this girl from Venezuela. Donald Trump says that he should have been given that prize. He actually bullies this girl to the extent that this girl actually carries the Nobel Peace Prize and presents it to Donald Trump in the White House so she can have a peace of mind. That's the man we are dealing with. You understand? I mean, yesterday, there's a whole debate in the United States of America about some abandoned maximum security prison. I mean, it was a horrible prison. It has now become a tourist attraction because of the atrocities which were committed there and so on. Donald Trump is asking for, is it $2 billion to go and reopen that prison? And they cannot believe that any US president can think that way and act that way. You understand? So this is what we are confronted with. Now, fortunately, the US and Israel have not met their expectations. And Iran has, like many other countries before it, proving that the US is nothing but a paper tiger. A combination of the US and Israel is just a combination of paper tigers. And that is good for the broad anti-imperialist movement. It has revived some sense of hope, you know, that the US cannot walk over us and so on. And for me, that is absolutely positive. You understand? It's one of the positive outcomes of this, you know. Yesterday, the US was calling for a ceasefire. Yesterday, the US was begging for a ceasefire. And the Iranians are saying that we didn't start the war. We are not the aggressors. Okay? But you cannot end this war on your terms. We want this war to come to an end. We want this war to end in a manner which would make it impossible for you to wake up any day and dream about bombing us and come bombing us again. You understand? So that is the new situation. But you see, for those who exaggerate the strength of the USA and so on, let's walk a little back into history. You know, Cuba is a small island state. Total population of Cuba is 11 million people. In fact, what resources does Cuba have? Tobacco. And some very, very hard oil that is so difficult to refine. That's all Cuba has. The US tried to invade Cuba. The Bay of Pigs invasion. They were beaten back so horribly, they had to run away in total disgrace. The US attacked Vietnam, a third world country. Third world country. They were beaten back so horribly, they ran. They had to run out of Vietnam. Should I continue? They went to Afghanistan, ragtag army. The Taliban was a ragtag army. They beat them. They ran away. They went to Iraq. They killed 2 million people. Claiming that the country had weapons of mass destruction, which we have not discovered up until today. They were beaten back so badly, they had to run out of Iraq. Show me where they ever won a war. Where? So there's a paper tiger. And they themselves, through their conduct, are displaying to the world that they are not as powerful as they claim that they are, and so on. I'm just hoping, that by the end of this senseless aggression against Iran, it will become obvious that imperialism is in its dying stages, and it will give hope to the forces of progress and peace to intensify the struggle to build a better world. That is my hope.
Thank you, and thank you. And that concludes our very first discussion for us. Now, this is the NBC reporting on exactly. So this is what they are admitting. Less than 48 hours after President Donald Trump told Americans the U.S. military had beaten and completely decimated Iran, Tehran shot down, he said it's an F-15E fighter jet, setting off a high-risk scramble by U.S. forces to rescue 2 service members from deep inside the Iranian territory. Iran also struck 2 Black Hawk helicopters and an attack jet that were assisting in the search and rescue efforts. So far, that's what they are admitting when it comes to what they've lost over the last few days. Well, we have to move on to another discussion, and that one has to do with the president's intervention in the matter that has taken a life of its own. It started with the Fourth Estate report, a publication that they did about the level of soul sourcing being used in Big Push. Well, the president says, bring your the allegations. Exactly what do you have? What's your basis for making this allegation? Bring everything to us. Let's look at it. Would also ask the road ministry to respond to it, and then I'm sure we'll all be hearing from the presidency on this matter. I'll start with Hamza.
Thank you very much, Alhaji. With your permission, maybe after that I will take leave. Our last one is having an event at home.
Okay.
So I need to be present now that I'm also part of the family leadership. First of all, I think that the questions are rooted in issues of integrity. And I have always argued that the most difficult comprehension one would suffer when you have His Excellency President Mahama as president is your failure to follow the personality John Dramani Mahama and to understand what he stands for, his appreciation of our developmental trajectory and how we can take advantage of that trajectory to not only build the necessary infrastructure in our country, but to a very large extent use that advantage to empower businesses to be able to compete competitively with their foreign counterparts. And you see, SENA, I am worried, and I have been since this matter broke. Not because there is an issue of corruption, but the continuous failure of those of us who ought to know better to understand the objectives of the kind of leaders we elect. It is critical. And I remember around the same table, even prior to the election, on one of our morning shoots on this program, I indicated that, look, the last election was not just a contest between the NPP and the NDC. I emphasized an understanding of those who would eventually lead these political parties, and the need for us to begin to imagine or project the leadership styles even before they are given the mandate. Because we made that mistake with His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And my caution was that we should not make a similar mistake. And I'm making this submission on the basis of not just the expose by the Fourth Estate, but the commentary I have seen so far coming from the New Patriotic Party, and to even a section of the Ghanaian people who mean well, but have been driven by this unfortunate propaganda of the NPP. And I'll respond to say, fortunately, I have a history with the Rose Ministry when Alhaji&Alhaji was there. And so I understand in perspective the objectives of His Excellency President Mahama when it comes to that ministry. SENA, a fundamental question of principle is being asked. Did the NDC in opposition criticize sole sourcing? And my answer is in the affirmative with a qualification. And you can cross-check that. Yes, we did. But we did not just criticize sole sourcing, but we criticized the abuse of sole sourcing. And the emphasis was on the abuse. That is why we made a commitment that even upon election we would take a look at the act and see how we could further deal with the issue of sole sourcing, and only make a reservation for national interest projects that we feel that there is a need for urgency and the likes. Because in principle, the law is not bad, but the law also leaves room for potential abuse. And we spoke about that. And the impression should not also be created that the first political party to have criticized the issue of sole sourcing was the NDC. Many have forgotten. Under Mahama 1, the likes of Gabi Ochridako took the NDC government to town on the issue of the sole source contract to West Blue, remember, at the ports. And they condemned the decision of the government to go through sole sourcing. So, in principle, yes, the NDC criticized the NPP on the adoption of sole sourcing for most of their contracts. We criticize the abuse. But the question we have to ask in relation to this Rose Ministry saga is that, is it different? Yes, in principle, it may not appear different. Nor in form, it may not appear different, because sole sourcing is sole sourcing. So if you criticize sole sourcing under Party A, it is only proper that you don't do sole sourcing under Party B. So in form, it may be deceptive. It may appear the same principles, the same position. It may appear as though the NDC is backtracking on the promises it made. But in substance, the NDC has not done anything contrary to the promises we made. We have not. And that is why I said that it is important for you to appreciate the leadership trait of His Excellency President Mahama. Remember, somewhere in 2014, 2015, His Excellency President Mahama had cause to engage the nation and told us that as a deliberate policy, indeed, even during the 2024 election, he made references to it, that he decided to identify with the help of the engineers at the Roads Ministry, some specific local contractors to empower so that they will be able to compete effectively with foreign contractors. And it was that policy decision that birthed the likes of Marapoma. That policy decision in the roads industry alone brought on board in excess of 20 solid local contractors. And indeed, we had to go through sole sourcing, some of them restrictive, because if you had done competitive, their foreign counterparts would have taken the projects from them. And we would not have had the opportunity to empower our local people. And when the presentations were being made at the Road Ministry, one thing was clear. The cost component of local contractors doing the job was going to be higher than their foreign compatriots. You know why? Because the foreign compatriots had done it in a long while that they had become efficient. And so they could use lesser resources. But the issue was a matter of policy. Whether we would allow these critical sectors of our economy to be dominated by foreigners, or we would go through the opportunity cost of incurring a little more cost to empower our local contractors to also become efficient. And President Mahama thought it prudent to adopt that posture and that policy direction. And that is why today you can make references to the likes of Oswald and Co. and the likes of Marapoma, who are doing contracts not just in this country, but other neighboring countries. Thanks to His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama. Give me an example of a local contractor that had capacity before President Mahama became president to venture into other African countries. So understand that drive. And so that is an acceptable use of sole sourcing in our law. And I'll give you another acceptable use of sole sourcing. That same president, in the pharmaceutical industry, identified about 20 pharmaceutical companies, local companies in this country, if you remember, in line with that policy directive, and supported them in funds in excess of $43 million so that they could become competitive and throw out more jobs to our Ghanaian people. That is foresight. That is how you use the avenue, the legal avenue created in our law books for sole sourcing to empower people not to abuse the system. People have forgotten. I have in my hand exactly what President Mahama said on the 3rd of March 2025. And that brings me to an example of an abuse of sole source contracts. SENA, remember the economic dialogue. When he was presenting an outlook of the economic situation he inherited, he gave an example of a sole source contract that he had inherited. And this, he said, foreign single source procurement must be the rare exception rather than the norm. We must also subject government projects above a certain threshold to value for money audit. Today is not, don't we have a value for money bill before Parliament? So President Mahama is not a president who speaks anyhow. He's meticulous, and you need to appreciate that. That is the only way you can begin to appreciate many of these decisions that people like mandated to lead in his stead take. And you see, he said, threshold for value for money. And just this morning, I was reviewing some of procurement reports, and there was this procurement for poultry farmers, 10,000 units of something, and it was single source. He didn't end there. He said the reason for single source was urgency. And one company was given the contract to supply 10,000 units of whatever it was. The supplier and the person who assembles it here were not allowed to bid. That's President Mahama saying. So the assembler, the producer, and the one who supplies it in this country, they were prevented from bidding. That is under the MPP. And he said, and so the company that won the contract went to the supplier, bought the item for 4,500 and then sold them to the government for 6,600. walking away with 21 million on that supply alone. Alhaji SENA. Classical example of an abuse. You cannot, by any stretch of your own imagination, conclude that what happened in this instant is synonymous to what is happening at the Roads Ministry. That's why I'm telling you that in form it may appear the same, but in substance it's not. And we were criticizing the substance largely. So, to understand the issues at stake at the Roads Ministry and the so-called sole source contracts, you need to understand the orientation of the government, and especially the orientation of the roads and highways, because they know the person they represent. The Minister Agboja knows the person he represents. Not so. He represents the president. And he must act in ways that would give confidence to the president. And the only way to do so is to understand the political and economic objectives of the man you are representing. And so, in line with that, you cannot possibly be contemplating launching big push as a minister without thinking of continuing the president's vision of empowering local contractors through that process. So if you want to reduce the debate to issues of how many employees they have, that issue has been perfectly handled. Because and that was one of the issues that made me a bit uncomfortable. Because in the roads industry, it's seasonal. You do not expect contractors to have a standing workforce of say 200, 300 and be paying SNIT contribution monthly when they don't know when the next contract will come. It's seasonal. So if you go on a set as a civil society representative and you are making references to 4 employees or 1 employee, it is simply a manifestation of your failure to appreciate the nitty-gritties of that industry. And that was what I saw as far as the 4th estate investigation is concerned. And SENA,
please land on this note.
Oh my goodness, I've not even started, but I'll try. Please land. I'll try. I'll try. You see, so that point, we need to situate this. Now, I was hoping that evidence would be given of any wrongdoing in terms of issues of political abuse for personal benefit. Even the MPP and the 4th estate are unable to demonstrate that. Indeed, you are likely to find companies that were or that are approximately a year or 2 old in the construction industry, but a government that has a desire to build more local contractors will definitely take advantage of this big push agenda to give them such a leaning and support, especially when the funding is available. And so that is what we have done. And that is what my checks at the Ministry of Roads and Highways shows. If it is about our own personal benefits, and what we seek to get, SENA, from that ministry, I'm sure that on this table, I would have been one of the critical voices in support of the 4th estate expose. Because personally, I have my issues. But as far as the national interest is concerned, it is difficult to fault the decision of the minister and his directors as far as this particular project is concerned. You can only fault them if you do not understand the substance of the discussion and the objectives of the government. And I am convinced that after everything is said and done, and the report even is presented to His Excellency President Mahama will see his vision in the report that will be presented. And that vision will be defended by this government. Mind you, as a responsible government, we respect the work of the 4th estate. And we commend them highly for seeking to bring to the fore what they believe to be contradictory in terms of our promises to the good people of this country. It's something we should commend them for. And that is the reason why many of us are against adopting a posture that appears confrontational, especially when it comes to the works of journalists in this country, because they are effective partners when it comes to getting our democracy right. And the president we represent on these platforms appreciate that better because he's had the opportunity of working with them. And so, SENA, I can understand the obsession to look for scandals on the part of the New Patriotic Party, even taking advantage of sincere work.
What has New Patriotic Party done, Hamza?
Because I have listened to the debates
are we fourth estate?
where they are making references, where they are making, that's why I say I have listened to debates where you are making references to the fact that, this project has been inflated. It's because of that.
No.
I would have given you examples of contracts that the MPP came to meet in 2016. And subsequently in 2017, in a matter of 1 year, how those contracts were revised in excess of 70% of the original sum. Go to Department of Federal.
Don't go there, Hamza. Please don't go
but these are the
don't go there, Hamza.
We are not even being simplistic.
Let me finish.
We are not even being simplistic when it comes to the cost per kilometer, because we know that in determining the cost per kilometer, several factors are considered. My brother, some areas are rocky. The pricing formula there is different. Some are easy to deal with. The pricing formula would be far lower. We appreciate this. But even if we are going to compare the leap quantum of increment in terms of the cost of a kilometer of road, compare the figures and the MPP. In a matter of 1 year to what we are witnessing today.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I come to my left.
I understand him, but you see, I have my problem with him. Keep referring to MPP, and MPP is not fourth estate. You were not. You say you were far away. You now came. You don't understand the direction at which this discussion is going.
Is that what I said?
You see, no. But the point is.
Is that what I said?
No, the point is, Hamza. The point is, it is in our quest as politicians to get political power. I always caution we have to be measured in our promises. Sometimes when you are promising, you forget. What is the Procurement Act says? Single source or sole source is not a crime. It is stated in the law. And it is explained the circumstances under which you can apply it. But you wanted power. And you keep referring abuse. Source law was abused. A lot of contracts to people in Ghana, including the road ministry. People documented it and just kept quiet. Now you assume political power, and you need everybody knows the promise of then candidate Mahama, now president, big push to link national capital together, critical road infrastructure in this country to get it done. A big push. The idea is to get funding ready. The problem of the ministry has always been. The idea is to get ready fund so that contractors will not suffer and be able to do these works. In that case, maybe a decision will have to be taken, maybe to be able to get it done in time or whatever it is. Then, not until Fourth Estate brought it out. Some of us didn't know it was through sole sourcing some of the contracts were awarded. But when we later realized, personally, I didn't actually, my personal opinion, I didn't see anything wrong with it, based with my reason. From Bole, Tachima Bole, Bomboy Road, my problem is to get the road fixed. No, Hamza, don't go. Sit small and listen to it. Get the road. You go. Just sit. Just sit here. So you get the road fixed. I hope you are getting the argument. But as for the cost per kilometer, I have problem with the politicians. No, the minute that there are engineers as Ghana Highway Authority, Federal Roads Department, and Urban Roads Department. What per kilometer of our roads in this country? They should be explaining to us. Because they are the engineers. They know what goes into the costing aspect of it, especially the survey department of Ghana Highway Authority. And they have the idea. They would have visited the site, to know the topography or the nature of the land before they come to the office to do the pricing. All these things, I don't think it should be coming from the ministers. But why are we here? We are here because we made that promise. To the extent that we say we are coming to look at the law. Looking at the law means you are telling somebody that maybe you are coming to amend the law, maybe, or to remove sole source aspect of the law from the Procurement Act. In that case, leaving what? Maybe competitive tendering. And I ask myself, we are entering the rainy season, and you and I know part of the country, when it rains heavily, some of the roads are cut off. At that level, you need 3, 4, 5 months to embark on procurement processes to get it complete before you go to Babili Yaga Road. Last 2 years, it was cut off. This is a road that is linking Burkina Faso to Ghana, and Hamble, Babili, Lora, Nandom area, producing foodstuffs, getting into and transporting it to Tachima. So you need 4 or 5 months to be able to get the procurement processes complete before you get a contractor to go and fix that road. What would have been the economy and the life of the people around that area, even in the country as a whole? Because I know foodstuffs travel from that area to Tachima, to Western region, Western North, and to Accra. So there are emergency cases that you have to, you see, sometimes we blame ourselves. The policy or the framers of that law envisage there could be a situation, and sometimes that we don't have time and we need to look for somebody to intervene and fix the problem before we regularize things. But because in our quest to get power, all manner of promises were made. Today, you are now from radio station to radio station, TV station to TV station, and defending. But I personally don't see anything wrong, because when Fourth Estate requested the information, the speed at which the Ministry of Roads and Highway responded in giving out the data of the Big Push project will tell you that there's no any bad intention behind the award of the projects through sole sourcing. And the critical important I want to make before I move on is the empowering of the local contractors mentioned by Hamza. Is very, very important. If you go into the road sector, largely it's been dominated by foreigners. And if a policy decision is not taken, at least it will get to a time that there won't be much more local contractors in that industry. So, and it has always been some of us, our view that we have to be taking, not only the road sector, many sectors, taking our own people on board and be conscious. Sometimes policy direction, we have to let our people come in, just empower the local people. So, using the sole source to get the people, especially with the time they want to achieve that. If, and looking at the details of what Fourth Estate has presented to us, they are not telling us that maybe monies have been lost or people have chopped money, or even when it comes to the area of costing, they have not even been definite about it. Their major problem so far is the sole source that SENA company has given this project. Apia Danko has given. It has not been competitive tendering. It is sole source. But as to whether the cost is okay, maybe you have the capacity to execute the work within that particular frame time that is stated in the contract. That is not what they are telling us. And then I ask question. I say, what are you trying to tell us? It is only now because the law they have used is not, it's a law. There's no any wrongdoing. Sole source is part of it. Maybe if you look at the law critically and you are awarding the project, first of all, the ministry is concerned about the capacity of the contractor, whether he should be able to do the work, and the time given for the contractor to do the work is very, very, very critical. The capacity of the contractor is. So if we go to the law, it is also can even inform that if you don't have the capacity, you can be denied because you want to achieve a purpose. I hope you are getting the argument. But all these questions, they are not asking it because it doesn't bother them I asked, so I said, so why are you bringing us this information? Is it only the ministers claim that 40% of Big Push project has been awarded through source? That's the only problem. So, okay, if that is it, so we have heard. So how have we lost? Has the state lost money so far? Have we lost money? Or have you investigated the 100% or the 40% that has been awarded sole source? Are the contractors on site? If they are on site, is work progressing? If work is progressing, okay, contract A, B, C, D, how so far? Is it 30%? Is it 40%? Is it 50%? As against the time it was awarded. So I think, in my view, that is what Fourth Estate should be telling us. But as for the issue of sole source contracts, so now I can sit here and bet you, NDC will not touch the Procurement Act. NDC government under John Dramani Mahama will not change or amend the Procurement Act and remove sole sourcing. Future governments that will come will not touch the sole source, the Procurement Act, and will not change it, because there's a reason why it is there. And that reason, it is not to change this country. Well, there are emergency situations. And you need emergency interventions. And you can't do it when you don't have the law backing you to do it. So let's leave the politics when we get to some of these things. That is why I started by saying, because in their quest to get political power, they were on the past administration on sole source. See now, we are discussing, you are a media man. If you go to many of the sectors, ministries, so far, 1.5 years or 1 year, some 3 months into the administration, many of them have embarked on sole source contracts. But that is not the problem. My problem is, if at the end of the day, maybe the contract has inflated, just like what he was saying, and then now that we are hearing the Value for Money Act is being passed, but you see, the Minister of Finance too, it's just the laws are becoming so many that it will choke the system. Now you have bring a commitment authorization. Do you know what it means? Now no department or ministry or agency can go ahead to award a project if the commitment authorization letter is not received from the Minister of Finance. And in my findings, it is only the Minister of Finance who will sign the letter before the agency, ministry or department can go ahead in the award of contract. Now, we have the Procurement Act, which is also there. So now, if we go into the details of the Act, all these things that we are talking, it is entailed in the Act. See, now you are bringing it, the Office of Value for Money Audit. Aren't we compounding issues here? So it will get to a point, it will take 1 year to award a project. By the time the contractor or the supplier would have supplied or the contractor would have gone to site, the purpose of the project would have even elapsed. So let's take a critical look at these things and stop the politics. But when you are promising, be measured. When you are promising, be measured. You might not know. That is where the NDC government, they are today, especially with the road ministry. 40% sole source, person see it wrong. That is the road ministry. Other ministries would have also embarked on that. But the argument is that, are they performing? Are they delivering? We have no short change. They have not been too much over pricing of the contract. So when I see people explaining the cost aspect, I expect the engineers or the technical group of people at the ministry to explain to the people of Ghana. So you can have 2 kilometers in Accra, have 1 kilometer in Wa, but the price will not be the same. And if you ask the engineers, the technocrats will tell you why that variations. And I don't think if it happens like that, it's wrong.
Thank you. This is even in Europe, companies hire employees as and when. How can you hire workers or keep workers when you don't have any contracts? What kind of businessman will do that? There's also Vivian who says the Fourth Estate sits in their air-conditioned cars and offices and talk about sole sourcing road construction. They should travel to Hohwe, for instance, and experience the suffering we have gone through for 8 years under MPP, looking at the terrible nature of roads in Ghana. Who cares about sole sourcing or competitive bidding? In fact, all roads should be sole sourced for a faster work for Ghanaians to have respite. The fourth estate in this matter are enemies of progress and should not be taken seriously. That is coming from Vivian, who sent that. Lara? Yes, sir.
Between 2018 and now and 2024, when Nana was given power, there's a claim that over 40 billion Ghana cedis had been spent on roads. Over 40 billion had been spent on roads. And look at the state of our roads. And to think that doesn't pay the claim of the road ministry, that's 99% of all those contracts were through sole sourcing. So you see, the problem the MPP is facing in this discussion is one that borders more on credibility than anything else. 40 billion was spent on roads in the year of roads. What's the state of our roads? So, in fact, it's a problem we all face because nobody wants to listen to the MPP based on their own record. But having said that, I'm telling you, you did 99%, you spent 40 billion on roads. What's the state of our roads? You spent 40 billion, right? Year of roads 1, year of roads 2, year of roads 3. What's the state of roads in this country? You understand? So how for the MPP there, you see, when they speak on issues that are very important, then they make that issue even lose credibility. So I beg MPP, they should keep quiet and let us deal with this issue. See, we all took upon ourselves a procurement act. You understand? And for me, in all these issues, I think the issue is how principled and how committed are we to enforcing the law. Because I agree that we need to build private capacity. I agree that we need to empower local contractors. I agree with all that, but it must be done in accordance, you understand, to the law. Now, I'm looking at the Procurement Act, and I'm looking at the grounds for which we can engage in sole sourcing. You understand? Because sole sourcing ought to be the exception. It's not the norm. We know that in procurement, there are three ways in which you can do tender. You can do competitive tender, you can do restrictive tender, and you can do sole sourcing contracts. So that if your focus is to build private contractors, then the solution is not through sole sourcing. You can do restricted tender, because they're about right now, what my brother Hamza was saying, there are about 20 Ghanaians that have been empowered. You need to empower more Ghanaians also, because you don't want to. So even if you want to restrict it to just the Ghanaians, you can do that through restrictive tendering as against so the so-called 20 Ghanaians who were empowered. You want to pick just one. Why do you want to pick just one? Is it that they have some skill that only they have? Because when you read Section 40 of the Procurement Act, it says that a procurement entity may engage in single source procurement under Section 41 with the approval of the board in the following exceptional circumstances. And list exceptional circumstances where the goods or services are only available from a particular supplier, to where there's an urgent need, and it goes up. Because you see, I'm saying that the people do not have credibility, but that is not an excuse to act in a manner which does not conform to the law. Because we don't want a situation again where some other leader will come and do subject us to what another subjected us to. And it shouldn't matter whether that leader is MPP or NDC or whatever it is. You understand? So yes, I'm listening to them. I understand that we need to build local capacity. Well, another thing, we passed this law, the Local Content Act. How have we enforced it? How have we enforced the law, where the foreigners have continually used Ghanaians as a sieve to go around that law? Because we need to build. In fact, I'll support that, but we must do that in accordance with the law, so that even in this Procurement Act, what stops us from saying that, listen, the only grounds under which we should even consider a foreign entity in any procurement activity is where the locals themselves do not have any. And when I say locals, it's not about a foreign company coming to form a company in Ghana. I'm talking about a local company owned by Ghanaians. Yeah, because I can't everything foreign, and they always go around the law and so sourcing. So you see, there's good reason for why the president has asked for a report. Because he's president. I'm not sure he says John Mahama like or any other president will have the time to follow what's it called every individual. But it is good leadership that where he's heard the cries of the people, not to be trapped in the issue of NPP did 99%. Because that's but yeah, you can't run away from that. You don't have credibility. So let us give the necessary. No, you don't have it. That's what I'm advising you, Mojib. If you want to get that Mojib, punch, is it punch? It's not a fact that you use 99% of your contracts with a true sourcing. 99%. And then you think you have the moral right to speak. It's fact, and that's this is Alhaji. Alhaji is a gentleman and ladies intellectual platform. When you are speaking, we don't speak even if we disagree. I think everything you're saying, I agreed.
You know the show.
But that's serious minds always watch Alhaji. We should keep the standard. You understand? Listen, you see, politics in this country is changing. Usually how we do our politics, so they misbehave, we kick them out, and we suddenly forget what they did for us to kick them out. This time we won't forget. We won't forget the evil you subjugated us to. We won't forget that you spent 40 billion on roads that we cannot see. We won't forget that your purpose for procurement was not to solve the needs of the people, but rather to fill your pockets with money. We are in a country where we have just about 169 emergency beds. In this country, you must pray that you don't fall sick. You must pray that you don't fall sick. You understand? Anything you want to listen to you. No, we won't listen to you. So that's why I say, you see, you can leave them because I can clearly see you don't believe in them. Come and join us. Now you get some credibility. But insofar as you are there, MPP, a party that 99% of their procurements were through sole sourcing, a party that spent 40 billion on roads. Where are those roads? Master, 40 billion, where are those roads? You understand? So I want to commend His Excellency John Mahama for this step. He must investigate the issue. He took an oath to protect, defend, and preserve the laws of Ghana. Those laws include this law. That states out clearly for us circumstances that which sole sourcing ought to be done. You understand? And if the focus is to empower our locals, then I'll support that initiative 100%, but it must be done within. See, we shouldn't be shy to have a law that states that. We shouldn't be shy to have a law that says that in our procurement, we are going to give to Ghanaian, so not Ghanaian, so you come and register here, it's 100% owned. No, companies owned 100% by Ghanaians. We give those contracts, and we only consider the foreigners where we can't find a Ghanaian who can do that. And even that there'll be a strategy to empower those Ghanaians. We should be trying to put it in our law, because you go to the USA, they have the Small Business Act. In that Small Business Act, they stated clearly that a certain percentage of all their contracts will be reserved for American citizens. They boldly say they are pursuing an American agenda. Why can't we also boldly say that we are pursuing a Ghanaian agenda? You get the picture. So yes, His Excellency, I support you. Go into it. Ensure that they do the right thing. As in, you may disagree with His Excellency Jomama, but I have no doubt about his commitment to reset this country. But it's not easy. One man. People who use his name to. I'm not in any way saying that Governor Abuja is doing that. But I'm saying that if his focus is to empower the local business, he shouldn't be shy to say it. As I'm doing a restrictive tendering, and that restrictive, only Ghanaian businesses can. But the solution is not in sole sourcing. We cannot be seen to perpetuating the crime, the evil Mujib's people subjugated this country to. And I've listened to him, and he says that, in fact, a lot of the contracts in the ministry were just a continuation from their time. Sole sourcing, they gave, that's how dangerous they are. So sourcing they've just decided that, listen, to stop that culture of when the new government comes, we will stop what the old regime did. They've just decided to pay them, even where the rules were not done. So I support our politics there. My view has always been like the view of the late Dr. Percy. Everything is politics. Everything we do is politics. But there's a difference between politics and partisanship. They are two different things. So for the politics there, it will be there. If you understand what politics is, we should just put the interest of Ghana ahead of our partisan consideration when we are taking those decisions, and we should be committed to enforcing the law in whichever way or form and shape. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lara. Correct. Please.
Well, I think largely, I agree with what has been said.
Yeah.
So all the other three panelists have said virtually the same thing, which is that soul sourcing is not illegal. Soul sourcing is legal under our laws. And that there are conditions under which soul sourcing may be done.
Yeah.
So the question is, whether or not the soul sourcing which was done in the award of the big push projects complied with the law. That's the issue. You understand? If it complied with the law, then there's no issue to be discussed. Okay? What our friends from the New Patriotic Party are doing is that, look, at one point, President Mahama and the NDC criticized soul sourcing. And therefore, if they've done soul sourcing, let's go for their necks.
Yeah.
But that's problematic. Because I remember that when President John Mahama and some people in the NDC were criticizing soul sourcing, the NPP came up very strongly and said, we haven't acted against the law. I remember. So what has changed?
Yeah.
If not acting against the law was your defense, why is it that not acting against the law is not the defense today? It beats me, you understand? So for me, let's go back to the law. What has been done, does it meet the criteria set by the law? Finish. You see, there's an aspect of all of this which is also very important for me, which is simply that if you look at the big push projects, not all the projects were initiated by the Bahama administration. Because some of the projects had already been initiated by the previous administration, like the Swami interchange. And the contracts had been awarded already. And I'm told that there are 23 of such contracts. That ought to be taken into consideration in this discussion. Okay. For me, I recall under the Achampong government, perhaps if you take out the Nkrumah government, one government that did a lot of roads, there was massive road construction all over the country, there was so much construction, was the Achampong government. I was then a young reporter, first in Accra, and then eventually in Cape Coast. And I went on the inspection of these roads. Those days, the major roads were constructed by the State Construction Corporation, SCC. Ghana State Construction Corporation did most of the roads. And they were first-class roads. Excellent construction. Then beyond the State Construction Corporation were companies like KB and Sons, KS Annan, Mojabi Edom, and so on. Indigenous Ghanaian companies. How come that in a space of 30, 35, 40 years, all the Ghanaian companies have died? And now, most of our contracts are awarded to foreign companies. One of the very big companies then was SK Menu and Sons. Those of you who remember SK Menu and Sons, big contracting firm. What happened to all of these indigenous Ghanaian companies? What happened to them? Is it possible to have a new regime in which we would have a state construction company with the capacity of the state construction company which operated at that Champo? Is it possible, again, to have companies like KS Anand, KB and Sons, and so on? Is it possible? Because you see, all these foreign companies, when they come and they do the contracts and they make money, they send the money back to their countries of origin. One of the reasons why the city cannot become stable is the repatriation of profits. You understand? It's one of the major reasons. So all this talk about sole sourcing and so on, I want it to be properly situated. How does it affect the economy? Does it enable us to develop indigenous capacity? And if we develop indigenous capacity, how does that indigenous capacity help us to revive the national economy? These are the most important questions. You understand? When the argument is presented in such a way as to suggest political point scoring, I get very worried, because that should not be the purpose of the argument. When the argument is presented in such a way as to just suggest that we did it, you criticize us so you cannot do it, then there's a problem. The problem is whether the law was complied with, and if the law was complied with, what are the outcomes that we expect? Would those outcomes be beneficial to the state of Ghana? That's where we should leave the debate. You know, any other thing, as far as I'm concerned, is a waste of our time. You understand? Now, happily, President John Dramani Mahama has said, or has requested for the full text, you know, of the report which was put out by Fourth Estate. And he's asked for an investigation. Indeed, one of the most brilliant submissions that I've heard on this matter is a submission which was made by Nana Kumia, who is a spokesperson for the New Patriotic Party. And he simply said that, look, the president has ordered investigations. Let's wait for the outcome of the investigations, and then on the basis of the investigations, we can move forward. I think that that's reasonable. That's a reasonable position to take. Unfortunately, other members of the same communication team are saying that, no, we will not agree. I was with one of them on Wednesday, and he said that we will not agree that the president investigates the matter because road contracts are discussed at cabinet. This is a matter of major government projects and so on. So who is going to set up the committee? If somebody wants the matter investigated, who should it be? The presidential candidate of the NPP is the one who is to set up the committee? Or what? You may say that, okay, let Parliament set up the committee. You are in a tiny minority in Parliament. So it doesn't resolve anything. So I am sometimes surprised at this grandstanding, you know, which leads us nowhere. This is just empty grandstanding which leads us nowhere. We must always get value for money. And value for money includes the pursuit of the interests of indigenous contractors. Finish.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In fact, Aaron Oduya Mensah says you should add the Eagle Star. I don't know.
Yes, Eagle Star. Eagle Star was also one of those companies, you know, Eagle Star.
Then there's a Cool Squash who says, yes, an MPP man in movement for change uniform. Alan's man knows what he's saying. I think he's talking about you. That the earlier he moves to movement for change, the better. No, it's not United Party. It's not United Party. It's not United Party. United Party, yes. Kokusevon says the issues of public procurement and award of state contracts sole sourcing within the confines of law is not a problem. But this question of mobilization fees have been abused with no delivery, outputs, or nothing to show for it. Not only mobilization, site clearing, all of that. Anyway, I'd like to say a big thank you to our panel for today. And of course, a big thank you to Kwame Kwesi Jr., who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. A big thank you to Mujib Rahman, who is a member of the communications team of the New Patriotic Party. Lawyer and Rapia Dankwa is Director Legal of the United Party, and the attire I'm wearing is because of benefit by association. Somehow they were supposed to do it for the three of them, and then me, I took them there. So me too, I got measured and I got some. You know the three frontline communicators of the UP. He's not saying he doesn't know. So good morning to Afojo, fantastic one.
As benefit of our association.
Oh no.
Good afternoon.
Well, and also a big.
We'll charge you.
And of course, a big thank you to Hamza Soini, who is a member of the communications team of the National Democratic Congress. We'll see you same time next week. A happy Easter to those of you who are Christian. Happy holidays to the rest of us. And thank you for making time. And a big thank you to our partner stations. Of course, Radio Gold 90.5 FM. And we're live on Pan-African Television, live from our studios, live on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you for making time to join us. We'll see you same time next week.
These people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people.